Disney CEO Bob Iger finds himself facing a familiar crisis. And once again, it's tied to a major controversy surrounding one of Disney's most anticipated films, the live-action remake of Snow White. At the center of this debacle is Rachel Zegler, the lead actress, whose recent remarks have sparked outrage across social media. Just weeks after Zegler's polarizing comments, in which she appeared to criticize traditional values embraced by millions of Americans, Disney released the second trailer for Snow White. The reaction has been overwhelmingly negative. As of December 10th, the trailer has received just 27,000 likes compared to an astonishing 800,000 dislikes. And the disparity continues to grow. It's becoming increasingly clear that the release of Snow White could turn into a monumental flop, especially with the number of dislikes expected to hit the million mark in just a matter of days. But why has this Snow White remake, in particular, generated such a massive backlash? After all, Disney's recent track record with live-action remakes hasn't been stellar either. Films like Dumbo and The Lion King were met with a mix of indifference and mild disapproval, but none of them
700.
I'm not a mentat, but the quick math on this, it's a 14-to-1 ratio.
That's
14
insane.
downvotes to 1 upvote.
The interaction on the downside is
provoked the intense outrage we're seeing with Snow White. So what exactly is it about this movie that's turning it into public enemy number 1? To fully understand the uproar, we need to look at a combination of factors: the power of nostalgia, frustration with Disney's recent creative decisions, and a broader cultural debate over how classic stories should be adapted for modern audiences. Disney's live-action remakes have always faced an uphill battle with audiences. These films, while visually updated, often fail to capture the charm, artistry, and magic that made their animated predecessors so beloved. Yet with Snow White, the stakes feel even higher, as fans perceive the changes made to the film as a direct affront to the legacy of the 1937 classic. Let's start with the question that's been on everyone's mind since the remake was announced. Who really wanted a Snow White remake? It's important to remember that the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs holds a special place in film history as Disney's first ever full-length animated feature. Released in 1937, it broke new ground not only for animation, but also for storytelling in cinema, creating a cultural landmark that has
So what does this tell us? What does this tell us, Chris? It tells us the cultural significance of pissing everybody off, and not just our sphere, everybody. And this is why we talk about Snow White, the movie itself.
stood the test of time. Yet, while its significance is undeniable, it's also a film that few fans were clamoring to see remade. Unlike some other Disney classics that may benefit from a modern retelling, Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin, Snow White has largely been viewed as a piece of film history that doesn't need updating. Its charm lies in its simplicity, its hand-drawn artistry, and the fact that it was a product of its time. Despite being nearly 90 years old, Snow White continues to captivate new generations with its timeless story and innovative animation. In many ways, it serves as a testament to Disney's roots, representing the pioneering spirit that first put the company on the map. So why touch it at all? This is the fundamental question that has fueled much of the frustration surrounding the Snow White remake. It feels less like a creative endeavor aimed at honoring a beloved classic and more like a calculated move to exploit nostalgia for profit. Disney's recent strategy of revamping its animated catalog has led to a string of remakes that, while commercially successful, have been criticized for lacking the soul
During the 2010s, where there were demands from certain groups rather than audiences to make every female character strong. That was pushed so much and done so badly that people are tired of it. Whenever you give somebody too much of one thing, they eventually ask for the other.
of their original counterparts. In the case of Snow White, The decision to remake the film seems especially misguided, given the fact that the original still holds up so well today. Fans of the classic didn't see a need for a remake, and Disney's attempts to modernize the story have only exacerbated the situation. The core of the controversy, however, isn't just about the unnecessary nature of the remake. It's about the creative liberties Disney has taken with the story and characters. Changes that many fans feel betray the essence of what made Snow White so iconic in the first place. One of the most glaring examples is the decision to remove the 7 dwarfs from the story, replacing them with magical persons. This change, which was reportedly made after actor Peter Dinklage criticized the original portrayal of little people in the story, has been met with widespread ridicule and frustration. While Dinklage's concerns about the portrayal of dwarfs in the original Snow White are understandable, Disney's response to the criticism has struck many as an overcorrection. Instead of addressing the issue in a way that respects both the original story and the concerns raised by Dinklage, the studio's decision to replace the dwarves with magical persons feels like a hasty and poorly thought-out solution. Fans were quick to point out that this change not only alters a key element of the original story, but also removes potential roles for actors in the Little People community, a community that has long had limited representation in Hollywood. What was meant to be a progressive move has instead been perceived as a patronizing and unnecessary alteration to a classic tale. And then there's the issue of casting. Rachel Zegler, best known for her role in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, was cast as the titular Snow White. While Zegler is a talented actress, her casting has been the subject of heated debate, with many fans arguing that she doesn't physically match the description of Snow White as depicted in the original fairy tale. Snow White's defining characteristic, as stated in the story, is that her skin is as white as snow. While race bending in Disney remakes has been done before, with Halle Bailey's casting as Ariel in The Little Mermaid being a recent example.
Disrespecting the fans, disrespecting Snow White, which helped build Disney, disrespecting half the country doesn't help your film. All press is good press is bullshit.
Many fans feel that this particular decision is a fundamental misunderstanding of the character's identity. For them, Snow White's name and appearance are inseparable, and casting someone who doesn't match that description feels like a disregard for the story's original intent. But the casting controversy doesn't stop there. It's not just about Zegler's appearance, it's also about her attitude toward the original story. In interviews promoting the film, Zegler made several comments that have rubbed fans the wrong way. In one notable instance, she referred to the original Snow White as outdated and implied that the remake was necessary to correct the wrongs of the original film. Her tone during these interviews came across as dismissive of the original story and its legacy, which only added fuel to the fire. For fans of the original Snow White, these comments felt like a slap in the face. Instead of celebrating the legacy of one of Disney's most important films, Zegler's remarks suggested that the original needed fixing, something that fans strongly disagreed with. To make matters worse, her criticism of the prince's role in the story, framing it as an unnecessary and outdated element, alienated even more fans. In Zegler's view, Snow White didn't need to be saved by a prince, and the remake would reflect a more modern, feminist perspective on the character's journey. While there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to update a story to reflect modern values, Zegler's comments and Disney's approach miss a key point. Snow White was never about being a damsel in distress waiting for a prince to save her. The original story, while it does include a romantic subplot, is primarily about resilience, kindness, and staying true to oneself in the face of adversity. The prince in Snow White was never the focus of her journey. He was a symbol of hope and love, not the crux of the story. By framing the removal of the prince as a feminist win, Disney seems to misunderstand the essence of Snow White's character. What many fans find particularly frustrating is that Disney's changes often feel condescending, as if the studio believes it knows better than the audience about what these stories should represent. From altering the lyrics in The Little Mermaid to removing key scenes in other remakes, Disney's updates often come across as heavy-handed attempts to retrofit classic stories to modern sensibilities. In doing so, they risk stripping away the very elements that made these films resonate with audiences in the first place. This brings us to the broader cultural debate that Snow White has inadvertently found itself at the center of. For years, Hollywood studios like Disney have been grappling with how to balance nostalgia with the desire to inject progressive themes into their stories. On one hand, we're living in an age where intellectual property, IP, reigns supreme, and studios are hesitant to create original content when they can rely on established brands to draw in audiences. On the other hand, there's been a strong push in recent years for studios to reflect more inclusive, modern values in their films, often referred to, sometimes disparagingly, as woke storytelling. These two priorities, nostalgia and progressivism, are frequently at odds, and Snow White is the latest casualty in this ongoing culture clash. Disney's attempts to modernize the story, while also banking on the nostalgia of the original film, have resulted in a product that feels disjointed and out of touch with its core audience. Fans of the original Snow White aren't resistant to progress. They're resistant to unnecessary changes that feel performative and out of step with what made the original story so beloved. Disney's handling of Snow White is emblematic of a larger issue facing the company. For years, Disney has relied on its classic films to drive box office success. But with each misstep, it becomes clearer that this strategy has its limits. Audiences are growing tired of seeing their favorite stories reimagined in ways that feel inauthentic and disconnected from their original intent. The backlash against Snow White is a wake-up call for Disney. If the company continues to alienate its core audience, it risks losing the very fans that have supported it for generations. So, what's the solution? For Disney, it's time to rethink its approach to remakes. Instead of trying to fix classic films to fit modern trends, the studio should focus on what made these stories special in the first place. Audiences don't want perfection, they want authenticity. They want to see characters and stories that are respected, not reimagined to fit a corporate agenda. And most importantly, they want to feel like their love for these classics is being honored, not dismissed as outdated or problematic. In the case of Snow White, Disney had an opportunity to celebrate one of its most iconic films. Instead, the studio's decisions have sparked a controversy that could severely damage the movie's box office prospects. Fans aren't just frustrated, they're disillusioned. And if Disney doesn't course correct soon, this pattern of alienating its audience could become a much larger problem for the company's future. What do you think about all this drama surrounding Disney's Snow White remake? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more updates on Hollywood controversies and all things Disney. See you in the next one.